Welcome to Healing Your Families. This is Emmalou Penrod, and I help you as parents go from frustration, stress, and overwhelm to calm, confidence, and joy so that you can achieve the quality of family life that you desire. I am so excited for our episode today. I have some really special guests. This is Juliet Owen Nuttall. She and her husband Daniel are fertility well-being practitioners, and they have an amazing story. And as with many cases, it's our journeys, our struggles that lead us to our passions and our willingness to share with others. So, Juliet, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I had the opportunity to see your precious daughter, and there's
Yes.
a story about her.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want me to kind of give you the overview of our story?
Oh, I'd love it. Yes,
Okay.
please.
It's quite long. But, so I think for me, particularly, I was very career driven in my 20s and 30s, and children were kind of at the back of my mind. It was a one day thing, and I was focusing very much on my career, being in a world. I like challenges in life, so I chose a very male dominated environment to be in. I actually became a firefighter, and I that was an ultimate dream of mine to do that. And also at the same time, I had also trained to be a shiatsu practitioner, which is Japanese healing arts along with Chinese medicine. And so I had the two things going at the same time, pretty busy. But there was always this little nag in the back of my mind that something kind of wasn't quite right with my life, and that wasn't quite aligned. And I was always like trying to pursue something and always trying to get to that next level. But I got to a stage where I really kind of wasn't very happy with my life, even though externally it looked amazing. You know, I'd got my ultimate dreams. I had known Daniel for a very long time anyway, and I'd split up from a long-term relationship, and we got together, and he said, you know, I want children with you. And I remember thinking, well, I had some major issues with my menstrual cycle anyway, and I hadn't menstruated for 10 years because I'd had eating disorders, and I'd had a lot of mental health issues. And I remember thinking, well, I really don't know. You know, the doctors have kind of always said to me, you know, you probably won't have children because of the way your cycle is, and, you know, you've had all these issues. And so once again, I just put it to the back of my mind. I didn't really think too much about it. And I was 36 at the time. But I was experiencing a lot of pain every month, a lot of issues. And Daniel said to me, you know, he's studied nutrition most of his life. He's been around nutrition since about age 5. And he said to me, I think you need to make some changes to your diet. And I thought, what do you mean? I'm a vegetarian, I'm healthy. And he said, no, I think you need to make some changes. Let's make some changes. And I started to kind of eat more green vegetables, kind of just bringing a bit more of the fresh stuff into my diet. And I started to notice a change. And I thought, well, this is great. You know, my menstrual cycle started to regulate. And once again, I just put it to the back of my mind. But there was some niggles still going on in my body, and I had a lot of pain every month that still didn't go away. You know, even sex was painful. And I just put it to the back of my mind. And Daniel and I had a lot of frustrations in our life. He had a business, and we kind of just decided that we wanted a big change. By that time, I had reached 40, and we just decided that that's it. We need to make a change in our life. Maybe that's what needs to happen. And we decided to, well, we thought we were going to sell his business, but actually we got a partner involved, which meant that the business could run in the UK, and we could then buy a business out in Costa Rica and go and live there. And it was like we'd made it. And we moved there, and literally immediately our whole life fell apart. We thought we'd gone and purchased a dream, but it became a nightmare. Our business in the UK, the business partner stole all our assets, basically robbed us of everything that Daniel had built for his entire life. And the business in Costa Rica was basically non-existent. We've later found out that this was quite common down there, and that people would kind of make these businesses up. And even when you had all the solicitors and all the agreements, the actual local lawyers were involved in the scam. So it was basically a scam. We didn't have a business, so we ended up with nothing. And Daniel's very resourceful. He just it was actually a horse riding business. So another local business heard about what had happened and said, hey, look, I need some help, come and help me. So we went and helped him, and he had some issues back in the States. So he said, look, I actually need some help. Can you run my business? And while I go back to the States. So we took over his business, and we thought, great, we've got something. Once again, there were some niggles with my health, and I started to deteriorate quite rapidly. I started to experience a lot of pain in my right side, and didn't really know what to do. And I didn't really reach out to anybody because I hadn't told my family about anything that had gone on, because I was so ashamed of, like, we'd gone on to live the dream, but it became this nightmare. And I was so ashamed. I just thought, I can't tell anybody, my parents will worry. And also my dad had also just been diagnosed with cancer. So I thought, I'm not going to let my mum know anything. And I just kept it. I actually became very seriously ill. I had a mental breakdown, I had a physical breakdown, and I couldn't get out of bed. When we're talking about bed, we actually were living in a stable, in a tent, and because that's all we had to live with. And we had this, Daniel again was just looking for somewhere where we could live, to kind of have a proper roof over our heads. And this lady said, I need some help. I'm going to have to go to the States. Can you look after my place? I went there and I literally collapsed. I didn't get out of bed for a month. I was so ill. I was so scared because I didn't actually know what was wrong with me. I had all sorts of things that are going through my head. What is wrong? We couldn't actually get me on a plane because I was that ill. So Daniel actually started just asking around, like, what can I do to help Juliet? She's in so much pain. She's the closest hospital was 100 kilometers away, so it really wasn't possible to go. So he used to be walking up and down the beach, and there was this funny fruit they call the stinky fruit, and they said it was noni. And a lot of people said, this fruit's got some amazing properties. And he thought, well, I'm just going to do whatever I can. So he started making me these drinks with this noni, and I actually started to pick up, and I got well enough to get back on a plane. this fruit is amazing. It just it handles bacteria in the body, and they use it out sort of in the jungle in the Caribbean. It's quite well known. So I got back to the UK, and the doctors could not find what was wrong with me. They were convinced I had a tropical disease, and they eventually found that I had a huge infection in my womb, in my fallopian tubes. They wanted to do surgery there and then, but they said, "You're so ill, we can't do that. There's so much threat to you because you've got such an infection in your body. We're going to see if we can do externally and drain it." And they did. I went back for further tests once I actually eventually got out of hospital, and the consultant just looked at me and he just said, "You're 41, you've had children, right?" And I said, "No, it's never happened, and you know, I don't know." And he said, "Well, your chances of ever having children, you're never going to have them naturally." And he said, "I'm just going to put you on a surgery list because it's a mess, you know. I've seen the scans, I've seen what's been going on down there, and it's a mess, and I want to put you on the surgery list." By that point, I kind of was I'd been through so much that I thought, well, actually, maybe that's just the best option for me. But there was still this niggle in the back of my mind, you know, what about having children? What do you want to do? Like, I really wanted to have a family with Daniel, but I didn't know like what my options were. And because of all my training, I thought, you know what, that maybe there's something I can do. So, and I was a bit ashamed in a way that I'd kind of put my training to the back of my mind, and I thought, no, it's time to get all my books out again. It's time to delve into that and see what's been going on. So I delved right in. Daniel and I really looked into all the patterns in Chinese medicine of what goes on in a woman's body in like the menstrual cycle. And I started to do some work. I started to get my diet sorted. It'd kind of been all over the place for the last sort of, 5 years. I started to get my diet sorted, and I started to kind of build myself back up, sort of mentally and physically, because I was at rock bottom. And I thought it's just time to just build myself back up. And unfortunately, at that point, my father died, and Daniel and I were not in a good place either. He had to go back to Costa Rica, so actually some of our animals were out there, and we kind of hit a point where, do we have a future together or not? We weren't really speaking much. So it kind of put a bit of a, it was like, where do we go from here? And we had a lot of conversations over Skype, and I said to him, I'm going to come back to Costa Rica, and I need to get my animals back, and I need to see if we've got something left. And when we got back together, we had a lot of long talks and realized, we do have something together. We've just been through a lot. And so we started to rebuild our lives, and focusing. What we discovered that we just been focusing so much on like the pursuit of success, and forgot like really what was important to us. So we started to piece things together, and we decided to write a book based on the Chinese 5 elements, which is the theory based around what I was looking at in my infertility journey. And we sat and we wrote a book. And then my mum then told me she'd got cancer. So I said, look, I think I need to go back to the UK, and I really don't think I've got a life out in Costa Rica. So, and Daniel said, I'm going to come back with you. We're going to get our animals back on a plane. I'm going to come back. We got back to the UK, and then I was met with my mum. My mum's okay. She's managed to have treatment and go through the cancer treatment, but she kept on at me because I was actually still in a lot of pain. She kept saying to me, you need to have the surgery. And it's my little girl. And I was getting very upset because she was actually pressuring me a lot about having surgery. And the letters kept coming and I kept putting it off. And then when Daniel came back to the UK, he saw how distressed and upset I was about, I didn't want to go and have surgery. And I made the decision. I said, right, that's it. I am not going to have the surgery. I'm going to see if I can just sort this pain out. You know, I kept going to A&E, you know, almost every month in so much pain. And it transpired that I kept having burst cysts that were, you know, ovarian cysts. So I just said, I'm just going to sort the pain out. So I really started to delve in deep. And I also got a lot of help, outside help, because I thought there must be something that I'm missing here that I can't see. So I got some outside help, and I worked with a couple in Canada who did some really, who taught actually both Daniel and I to do some sort of almost like distant healing. And I started to feel much better. I started to feel kind of back to myself. And Daniel and I went to a family wedding in the August, and this was in 2019. And it was a family wedding of Daniel's. His ex-girlfriend was there, and she had a baby, and we both felt okay. We just had sort of thought, whatever our path is, it will be. Whatever will be, will be. And we felt like we were back together. 1 month later, we conceived Lyra, and I was age 44. And I gave birth to her age 45. And I'm actually grateful for the journey that I went on, because I actually now feel like I'm much more aligned with myself, and we have created a life that actually works for our family rather than the life that we had, which would never have worked. And when I think back, I used to have these thoughts of when Daniel and I were running Daniel's business of, how am I going to have children? How am I going to fit children into this life? So it was almost like it all happened for me to change, for me to align with me and, you know, what I really needed to do in life. And I am actually glad I went through the process. At the time I wasn't, but I'm glad, you know, that I went through it. So that's our story.
You know, and I think most people will agree, the times that we learn and grow the most are those times when we have the most to overcome. I think our greatest trials can be our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
So
Definitely taught me a lot.
So and always love hearing cases where being told you'll never have children, and there you are with a sweet little one. And so along this journey, it sounds like you took what you had studied before and then did additional research.
Yeah.
On,
I think what we hit upon was the doctors were telling me, like, mechanically that things were wrong. But when Daniel and I researched a lot, you know, we researched a lot more into it, we discovered that a lot of the way in which we live in society now is creating what we've called modern infertility. And the doctors are actually telling women, you know, or women are kind of thinking, I've got no options. But there's a lot we can do, because when I delved in deep, so one of the patterns is well, one of the elements that are out of balance is the water element. The water element is all about stress, and stress affects fertility massively, and the way in which we live our lives affects fertility. So we realized that you have to remove a lot of the stress, and obviously you can't remove stress from your life completely, but we learned some really great tools that can break through and break the habit of stress in that moment. And that was really key for me, because I've always been very stressed and anxious and suffered from depression. So when we actually learned those tools, it was knocking the stress on the head in the moment and breaking the kind of the cycles that I was getting locked into. And we also discovered there were some natural herbs that could help your body adapt to stress, help your body kind of deal with stress in that moment. So those were some key factors, and the way in which I learned that, a way in which a lot of entrepreneurial women, how we live our lives is affecting how our bodies work.
I want to, that's what I wanted to ask you about. You mentioned that earlier, that the way we live our modern lives causes infertility. And then you mentioned, is it the fast pace? What, and the stress?
We broke it down into kind of some key areas. So the one is stress, and stress shuts down. So if I just kind of speak it in very simple terms, when we're in stress, we're in fight or flight, and our body is running the adrenals and the cortisol. And when it does that, all the hormone signals that come from the pituitary gland, it kind of shuts off all the other natural hormone signals that are happening. So it shuts off our digestion, and it shuts off our reproduction. It stops those signals from going. So it's almost, it's the body's saying, we have to survive right now. So we're not going to focus on reproduction or so much our digestion. So it actually shuts those hormones down, and over long periods of time, it's shutting it down on a long period of time. That's the one part.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the other part is our diet and our lifestyle builds up. So I discovered that I was experiencing what the doctors call, and what's kind of known is what's called estrogen dominance, which means that your body is building up excess estrogen. And the symptoms that I was experiencing was the fact that I had estrogen dominance. The doctors never told me this. They never really said how to deal with it. And you can actually manage it through your diet. And it's not a strict diet. It's just knowing where the excess estrogen lives. We also have in our modern lives a lot of plastics and a lot of toxins. And that builds up what's called xenoestrogens in the body. And there are studies now that are saying these xenoestrogens contribute to some forms of breast cancer as well. So it's this was a protocol that I actually got from a doctor who was actually helping somebody that I knew with breast cancer. And I then got this protocol and saw that he was saying in the protocol, you must remove all these what are called xenoestrogens, which is basically the plastics, the parabens, all the toxin, all the sort of toxic parts of maybe the environmental things that we have in our home, or the skincare. So it's really important to have natural skincare, really important to not have too much plastic wrappers on your food. It can be, it can be managed. You don't have to kind of throw it all out and be, totally like strict, but it's the way in which the estrogen the estrogen gets distributed through the body is through the liver. It gets transformed through the liver and then excreted through the bowel. So if you do suffer from any form of digestive issues and your bowel is compromised, the excess estrogen is not leaving the body, so therefore it's building up, and the body doesn't then build more progesterone, because we need progesterone when we become pregnant to it helps embed the embryo. But the estrogen, the progesterone doesn't sort of get produced more, so that there's a basic level, and there's too much estrogen and there won't be enough progesterone to actually embed that embryo. So that was one massive thing that I had been dealing with for years and didn't know, and nobody told me until I actually discovered and kind of worked it all out and worked out what I needed to do.
For a lot of couples, getting pregnant is so simple, and now as you explain it, it is really very complicated.
Yeah, we like to say it's an art and a science.
Now, you mentioned the plastic food wrappers. I had never, can you elaborate on that? I had not realized. So is there a certain type of wrapper that's better, or?
It's really just any kind of plastic. It's what happens is it's the it leaches into the food. So as it's in contact with the food, it leaches in. So like plastic. So if people are buying water in a plastic bottle, say on a daily basis, they want to have spring water or good water, actually that's all being leached into the water, the plastic. And obviously a lot of our food now comes in plastic wrappers.
Yeah,
Everything.
I was trying to mentally figuring what food can we buy that doesn't come.
Yeah, you
Plastic.
can't, like I say, I'm not totally over the top with it, because for one reason, I've had eating disorders. So if anybody says to me diet or restriction, I'm like, whoa, that doesn't work for me. So you just have to allow the body. So the protocol that we use is called alkalizing. And you test your alkalinity every day. And if you know that your body is at 7.36, your body can get rid of the toxins. The body can then, it all leaves the body, and it's able to do that. What happens when you are not alkaline, the acidity builds up and it affects these cells. So, and a lot of people are saying, oh, the doctor might have said my eggs are bad or something. Well, eggs are cells. So you just need to know how to get your body into a good place. And it's not something that I would teach people to say, oh, just do this to get pregnant. It's important that you do this as you get older.
To be healthy.
Because you're more healthy and vital as you go into your 40s and 50s. So, I'm teaching people that this protocol will continue, for your longevity and your health.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking too of, a century or so ago, when our great grandparents made all of the food. They grew their own vegetables, ate them fresh out of the garden. bake their own bread and just put a towel over it
Mm.
to, to keep it moist.
Yeah.
And and you're right, our modern way of living has changed so much.
Mm. And it's a buildup of everything that's contributing to our to compromise the reproductive system. And there are a lot of things you can do, but the doctors don't really they don't know how. That's why they don't tell you. They don't know how.
I don't know. I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the United States, the majority of their training is pharmaceutical. They can
Yeah,
tell you all about drugs and medication, but I don't think they get much training at all
no,
on nutrition or prevention.
no. They get the kind of, we did a lot of research, and they get like 6 hours of nutritional training in their whole, in
Years.
their whole training. So, people go to the doctor and say, well, I need help. Well, the doctor doesn't know how to help.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the doctor saved my life, so I'm not anti the
No,
doctors.
no.
I'm just saying that they just didn't know how to help.
Well, to me, it goes back to the who is fully responsible for your health,
Yeah,
and it's fine to take advantage of the knowledge that other people have, but just like you and Daniel did your own research.
yeah, yeah. We did a lot, but there was a lot of the research that we did was based on a lot of the knowledge we already had. We just had to revisit it because we'd
Mm-hmm.
forgotten about it, and kind of, we'd gone on this kind of 5 year kind of dream state almost of like the pursuit of success, and kind of forgotten some of our grassroots, forgotten some of the
Yes.
things that we trained and that we were doing in the pursuit of something else.
I,
um,
I love hearing how when you were so critically sick, a month you could not get out, and Daniel, oh, he sounds like an amazing human being. He was
yes,
there not only keeping everything running and everything going, but finding something to help you and fixing you those special
yeah.
dreams that wow.
I mean, it had its challenges because, the masculine wants to fix.
Yes,
So he
yes,
wanted to find a way to completely get me well. And he kept getting frustrated because he was like, well, you're not quite 100%, and obviously there was no way because my body had a massive infection, but he got me well enough to get on a plane.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he was able to do that. But that had its challenges too,
Oh,
being
I'm
he
sure.
wanted to completely fix me, but he wasn't able. But he was definitely instrumental in saying, look, let's not go with the surgery, let's find another way, let's see what we can do, and I am still pain free. I managed to become pain free, and I am still pain free. So I get the odd niggle if I really, really overdo it on my right side, and that's just scar tissue that kind of pulls a little bit. But that's it.
Well, and I'm also thinking what this did for your relationship. Sometimes when you go through a severe trial like this and you come to the point where you're saying, do we have a future? Is our
Hmm.
I heard once that it's a cycle. There's the honeymoon. You fall in love, everything's perfect. Then you begin to notice, that's not quite perfect. There's a few flaws, problems. It gets aggravating. And then when you get to the point, you do your clearest thinking when you're analyzing Do I stay or do I go? What are the
Mm.
advantages? What are the disadvantages? And it sounds like you went through that maybe more than once.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. We, I remember thinking, there was a time when we were sitting in the jungle and we'd been writing the book, and it kind of, our relationship was still kind of all over the place. And Daniel just said to me, you know what? You just might as well go back to UK. I'll stay here, and that's it.
Oh.
And I remember thinking, I had worked really hard on myself to, that before I got with Daniel, to attract the right guy, because I'd been in a 15-year relationship that wasn't right. So
Uh-huh.
I knew I wanted to be with this person. I thought, wow, that's going to be, if I have to do that process again, there's too much at stake here. And it wasn't that we didn't love each other. It was just that we couldn't find that spark that we initially had.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we learned was that we all have a masculine and feminine energy. And as I started to go more into my femininity, the spark started to return. And what had happened was I was more masculine because I was focusing more on business, and I'd forgotten kind of my femininity. And when I think back to the firefighting days, the niggles that I had was a part of me saying, you've lost your femininity. You're trying to compete with these men and you've lost that femininity. And that's one of the key aspects to what I see as conceiving as well, being able to know how to go into that femininity. And, what we call it, we dance in and out of masculine and feminine energy all day, but primarily I now stay in my femininity. But I had this belief, and this is one of the fundamental parts of my healing on my journey. I had this belief that if I was to be feminine, that would be weak, or I would be like my mom who lost her identity. And one of my greatest fears was to lose my identity becoming a mum. So the process, all of what we learned was I discovered how to be in my femininity, but stay kind of in my power and not lose myself. And I say to people now, I actually found myself on this journey. I feel so much more content in myself being a mom now than, 10 years ago. I love being a mom. I love that femininity. I love it. I realize that there's a massive amount of power, and when I'm in that brings the spark back to the relationship, because there's this polarity that happens. Daniel can be in his masculine and I can be in my feminine, and that's where the spark. So when we first begin a relationship, that's why there's all that spark, because we're in a polarity. And that's when this spark goes, we lose the polarity. So we know how to bring that back and connect, with our kind of authentic selves, so that was another big part of my journey. Kind of, what did motherhood mean to me? What does that actually mean? What does it look like? And that's partly what we teach women now. Like, what does it really look like for you? Not what society says. What's it going to look like for you? Start making those changes now. Don't wait, for you to have the family, because when you have children, you're going to get a whole new set of challenges.
Yes, yes. The time to sort it all out is before.
Yeah.
Well, what is the name of the book that you wrote together? That just sounds like it's fascinating.
Yeah, that's so we may change the name of the book, because we haven't really kind of put it out there very much, because we kind of thought it was a bit basic. but it was about like the title was, you know, how to deal with the conflict in relationships, and an understanding. So it's based on the elements in Chinese medicine and how we all have a dominant element. And if you can understand that element in your partner and work out what their needs are, then it reduces the conflict in relationships. So we're actually going to start kind of putting it out there a bit more, because it was kind of left on the kind of the bookshelf and just forgotten about.
Uh-huh. A
Um,
project to be finished.
yeah, a proper project to be finished.
Awesome. Okay, now talk about the services. How do you help couples now? And I'm assuming you do work with couples, right?
We do. I mean, primarily we work with the women, because primarily there's we help the women kind of navigate the journey. The you know, with the men do come in, but you know, primarily it's the women that we work with. So we have created a course that people can just buy, you know, and work through it, self-paced. We also have a course where you can work through it, and we will do group coaching to help you really make sure you implement all the bits and pieces in the course. But we also just have like a free, like, fertility secrets, you know, the different parts that I've talked about, how to implement those parts, and you know, what you can do now, you know, and a very easy kind of following, like what's happening in your body, why is it happening, what you can do about it, and how to start changing a little bit of your lifestyle, because your lifestyle, there's nothing wrong with your lifestyle, but it's how you can just make some shifts and changes.
Yes. And it's interesting, you talked about understanding what's going on in your body. I think that's part of our modern life is we're becoming out of touch with our bodies. We're not really like practices like yoga that advocate that mind body connection.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, for me, I felt like such a fraud for a long time, because it, you know, with my training, I was trained to listen to my body. I was trained to listen to other people's bodies. And because I'd forgotten it, I felt such a fraud that all this stuff I know, and I was ignoring my own body's signals. I just ignored them for so long that it got so bad that, you know, I nearly died as a consequence. So we do teach, you know, women just how to just start listening to those signals, because the body is telling them something, you know. They get frustrated that they can't conceive, or that the, you know, and the worst thing is that they're focusing on their ticking body clock, and so they're in their head. And I always say to women, you don't conceive in your head, you conceive in your, you know, you conceive in your womb. So we teach lots of little quick tips on get out of your head, get into your body.
Yes, and when we talk about stress, granted there is stress in life, it's unavoidable, but I think quite often we put stress on ourselves. We make things worse. We worry about things we don't need to worry about. We
Yeah,
we try to control something that's out of our control.
yeah, yeah. And society, my mum's generation, 30 was old to have children, and now the women are getting a lot of pressure, like, well, you haven't had children yet, or you've left it a bit late. So there's all this pressure, and that puts a stress for them to, I must get it done, I must get it done, I must get it done, and that's the problem that they're facing.
Yeah. And then you mentioned too the masculine energy. We women feel like I've got to compete, I've got to be better, and
Yeah, Yeah, and that's, and you know, women in the workplace can actually be, you know, I don't disregard men, but we can actually be better than a man in a workplace because of the way in which we can multitask. And we're naturally meant to multitask to be mothers. You know, that's how we can be mothers. So we've become really good in the workplace, but unfortunately we've forgotten that femininity, and to compete in the masculine world, the workplace action is a masculine action. So we just need to know how to, when we finish work, how to go into the femininity, how to surrender to that femininity, and how to switch out of the gear. Because often we have clients who say, all we do is argue, we clash, and you know, and I say, well, you need to not treat your husband like a work colleague. You need to treat him like your husband. So we talk about like shifting gears. When you come home from work or you finish work, shift gears, go into your femininity, you know, change your clothes, do something that makes you feel that
Yeah.
you're back in your femininity.
Well, and I wonder, is that really an accurate perception if we view feminine as weak? I see strength in femininity.
Yeah, definitely. I think the real femininity, I think I had this belief that I would be weak somehow.
Uh-huh.
But the feminine is very strong. You know, we can
Yes.
birth children. And I think there must have been I think probably like in my family, there was some kind of sense that the feminine
Sometimes
was
it's
weak. Yeah.
sometimes it's cultural
Yeah.
that, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and I think what happens is we try to become more masculine to kind of hide that, because we think that the feminine is somehow maybe culturally
Painful.
seen as weak. Yeah,
And
but we're
yeah. And now
far
you
from the
and now
truth.
you can teach your daughter this. You can teach her it is glorious to be a woman. Women
Yeah,
have power. Women have so much to give. You
absolutely.
know that's win-win women. That's what we're about. We want to provide this platform for all women to learn from each other, to share, to lift each other, to unite. And,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there's a lot of power there.
There's a lot of power, a lot of power. And I think the world is shifting um to allow women to be more in their femininity and that power. I think perhaps in the UK we have this perception of women because we had a prime minister in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher.
I remember her.
She she was this version of a woman, but actually, you know, and also we have a queen too. So I think there's maybe in the UK we have this cultural thing about women too, because we've had a female prime minister and we have a queen. So I think there's that part in the UK there, kind of what that looks like, and what we've been brought up to believe what that looks like too.
Yes, yes. Well, I I just wondered if will Daniel have a minute to pop on and add
Yes,
anything?
definitely.
In
Daniel,
about 10 more minutes, I'd love to hear a little bit
great.
from him, and
Let's
then I
talk
want to
to
make sure we hear how people can contact you.
yeah, let's talk to Daniel. I will go and be with Lyra and Daniel will take over.
And parents tag team. This is
Out we are,
love
that's
this
how we do
demonstration.
it. We pass the baton.
Pass the baton.
Thank you, Juliet.
You're welcome. I'll
Wonderful.
come back at the end.
Okay. Okay,
Hi,
Daniel.
Emily.
The man's perspective. I loved hearing that story. Oh wow.
Quite a journey. It was quite a journey, Emily. Yeah.
And you know, we often think of, oh, infertility is such a trial for a woman, But it
Yeah.
is for a man too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, do you want me just to tell me my perspective from a man's
That would be
perspective?
wonderful. Yes.
Um, I mean, up until I met Juliet, I kind of put kids to the back of my mind and never really thought about having kids. I always joked about having triplets with my ex, and she was like, "No, no, 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 no!" Like it was off, not going to happen. And I'd always kind of, I was building businesses and always like too busy for kids. And then I kind of known Juliet, and she was married, and then that kind of ended, and we hadn't seen each other in years. And then my relationship ended, and we somehow started hanging out. I think I went to her for shiatsu because I was burning out, my body was tired. Started hanging out, and then we got together quite quickly. It was about 6 weeks of just hanging out, and it was really quickly into the relationship. I was like, "You're the one I want to have kids with. Like, I've known you for years, and I've admired you from afar, as you know, as friends, and it's you. You're the one I have kids with." And she was just like, "Oh, that's really nice, but I've never been able to have kids, and they told me I can't." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like, kind of knocked the wind out of my sails. But I was like, "Well, that's just a challenge. Like, I'm not going to give up. You know, that's just a little challenge." And I guess it wasn't until kind of after 5 years when we've been trying and trying, and we kept kind of putting it back to the back of our minds, and we were obviously busy in business together, both being men in the relationship, and both running that masculine energy to really build the business. And it wasn't until Juliet got really sick in the jungle, and she had the major infection in her fallopian tubes, that I was like, maybe we are never going to have kids. You know, I'm always up for a challenge. So if someone says no, it's usually like, not right now, you know, but we'll get there. And it was for the first time I really saw my wife really sick, close to death, and thinking like, perhaps I did this to her, you know, pushing her for a baby, and pushing her and pushing her. And like, I might not have a wife, and I might not never have kids either. I might never get to leave a legacy behind, you know? And like, when your wife is like hanging by a thread, and I'm thinking I might not leave a legacy, it really impacts a guy, you know? It really impacts a man to think, well, this could be it. This could be the end of my legacy. This could be the end of my wife. And that really affected me on a mental level. I think at the time I was burnt out anyway. Juliet was not very well, and yeah, just for me, just my world came crashing down at that time. Just kind of thinking, this could be it, you know, this could be it. Luckily, it wasn't.
I love what
Luckily,
you
it
did to
wasn't.
care for her.
Yeah.
I think you need to be cloned.
Well, I can't take all the credit. I have to give credit to this fruit we found in the jungle. Okay. And this fruit I've been throwing away for months. We were running an eco lodge at the time. And this stinky fruit, I kept picking it up every day, getting it off the path so the clients couldn't smell it, throwing it as far in the jungle as possible because it absolutely stunk of cheese. Okay. Juliet was getting sicker and sicker every day. And I was researching, you know, what we could do with jungle medicines. And I came across this noni fruit. And then the next morning, I'm like, hang on, that's the fruit I've been throwing in the jungle for the last month or so, trying to get rid of it. Found a recipe, and it's like, no, you need to kind of harvest it, make the juice, mix it with some lime, and have a shot every morning. And so I started doing that for Juliet. And after about 7 to 10 days, like, she went from gray to like the color coming back in her face.
Oh, wonderful.
And then she was like getting out of bed, and she was like wanting to go down the beach and kind of be a bit more animated, because she was not animated until she was gray. And this fruit got her well enough to get her back on a plane, back to the UK,
Yeah.
back to the doctors who like
Wonderful.
misdiagnosed her for a while, and then found this giant infection in her.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we just have a few minutes left. I want to make sure that Juliet talked about the services you offer, the book you two started writing together. So you tell us the best way to contact you.
Best way to contact us is you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page called The Non-Invasive Method. So that's THENONINVASIVEMETHOD, The Non-Invasive Method. We've got a private Facebook group. We share free tools, free tips, free training, loads of resources in there. You've got Juliet's preconception blueprint, her preconception blueprint training, her cheat sheet. Any questions you need answered can get answered in there. If you're feeling stuck in your fertility journey, that's the place to go, because there's a community there of women who are struggling or in a similar place to you. So there's loads of resources in there. Facebook page, again, The Non-Invasive Method. And on Instagram, I think we're something different. I think we're women over 35 struggling to conceive.
And you're on LinkedIn, Daniel and Juliet Owen Nuttall.
Yeah.
That's where I found you. And how can they get that fertility cheat sheet? How can they get that?
So what I'll do, Emily, if it's okay with you, is it'll be in our Facebook group. So if you go to The Non-Invasive Method, it'll be in there. I'll make sure it's pinned to the top. And we've got a one-pager that we've developed. So everything we think you need to do. And there's videos, there's visualizations, how to alkalize, how to help your mindset, how to create a new story. So a lot of us are carrying around an old story, you know, the old story, and the doctor's kind of driven it in like, that's you, you're done. And we're like, okay, let's take that old story, let's disintegrate it, let's create a new story. So I've got a one page that I'd love to share with you. Perhaps you can share it with anyone watching that needs our help, or just reach out to us, send us an email. Daniel and Juliet 2020@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I guess Juliet's busy with the little one, and you know, it's interesting. We recorded this because time zone difference. This is her bedtime, and she can tell something's up, can't she?
Absolutely. She's like, you're not getting anything past me. But this is our life as well. This is how we do our life. We kind of dance in and out. If Juliet's needed in the business, you know, she'll jump in for an hour. I'll take care of Lyra, and vice versa. We have to kind of dance in between roles. It's just how we roll.
It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And take care. So
that's a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us, interview us.
There they both are. What a beautiful couple you make.
She's finally off to sleep, Emily.
Yes, all right. So for listeners, join us again next week at the same time. We'll have links to share to contact Daniel and Juliet.
Amazing. And I'll make sure I share the one pager because it's incredible. So thank you, Emily.
Yes, that's wonderful. All right.
Take care for now. See you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.